All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Palantir Weekly. This is episode number 141. We are here once again on a Friday night, 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Standard, 8 p.m. Pacific, 5 a.m. Sweden time, whatever you call Sweden time. And we're talking Palantir with Amir, Matt. It's going to be us three for the week. Everyone else couldn't make it this week, but the show must go on. And we've got a lot to talk about with Palantir. Amir, how are you doing?
As good as you could be doing at 5 a.m. CET, so Central European time. And yeah, I'm excited. We got the best of the pod. We don't need Arnie.
That's true. We don't need Arnie this week.
We're good enough.
Matt, how are you?
Always a good day when I get to talk to you two beautiful folks. But I'm sorry if people were trying to tune in for Arnaldo or our Swedish friend Vince. Yeah, unfortunately, they're not here. So if you're just sad to see me, then I guess you could just log off. But you have these two other beautiful men to help you get through the night, if that so fits your fancy.
We got someone saying, dude, just go to sleep. Dude, I'm not going to lie. I was tired. Like, I was ready to knock out. I know, Amir, you have to be tired. Matt, you're probably tired. It's like getting to be nighttime in Texas.
Do you know, when I wake up for these weeklies, I always run the thought through my mind, like, what should I just go to bed and then just say there was some complication? Like, my mind is already making excuses, like, not to make it, like, every week.
Well, this will be I'm happy you make it every week. This will be a more intimate episode with all of us three, and we'll be interacting with the chat a lot more here because we don't have that many topics to go through. And probably last 20 minutes, I'll put the StreamYard in the chat, and if anyone wants to join,
that'd be fun.
Hop in and ask a question or anything like that. I think let's get started with the biggest news of the week. This happened, and we didn't even know this was going to happen on Friday. But then on Saturday, after the episode, New York Times drops a feature-length article on Alex Karp, who is the guy running this ship. And it was a pretty cool article. There's a lot of good parts of it that I liked. I'm sure a lot of you in the chat read it. Let's start off with you, Matt. Maybe you read it. Maybe you got some pieces out of it. But what did you think was the implication of this article? What is the significance of the New York Times covering him? And any parts of the article that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I think when we've seen articles, specifically in the New York Times, or just a lot of articles in the past, it's been about the company and not so much about Alex himself. But I think what it's really trying to do, and specifically because it's New York Times, I think it's very significant, generally speaking, due to their left-leaning sort of ways, mostly in the United States. But I think, I think this just goes to show that maybe people are actually starting to open up across both sides of the aisle, specifically towards Palantir. And I think it's really trying to help Palantir be viewed in a better light. We've had a conversation last week. We were starting to, we're seeing, headquarters in Europe be impacted. We obviously saw the pushback with the NHS. And I think there's even still some hangover in the US about, hey, this is a CIA operative, PSYOP sort of organization, right? And I think people don't really want to do their full due diligence. So I think this is just an opportunity to show, really why Karp is really doing what he's doing. And it's not necessarily to try to take over the world or anything like it. It's really, truly to align himself with the company's values, which is saving the West and everything alike. And it's made him a billionaire, and it'll continue to be something that him and Thiel work on. And I think another piece that should be known as well is these guys are not immune to confrontation, right? I think one thing that people always forget is that generally speaking, Karp is a left-leaning sort of individual, and then you also have Thiel, who's more of a right-leaning individual, and then them themselves were very much at odds with respect to their political stances throughout college, but yet they're able to come together and put their, I guess, hatred for one each other's political parties aside and actually create a beautiful company that really focuses on what really matters, right? And I think that's a truly beautiful sort of thing to look at because it really shows true American values and it shows really why the company is put together. So there's probably a lot of good details in there that I skipped over, but I think that that's really the point that I wanted to make with respect to the whole thing is it's really about values and it's about delivering on those values rather than really trying to make money or anything like that.
Amir, your thoughts on the significance of the interview?
Yeah, I was about to ask if the New York Times is a Republican or a Democrat publication, but I think Matt answered it by mentioning that they're left-leaning, which makes sense since it's based in New York. And, it's also interesting that we got the Thiel Joe Rogan one just a week prior, and I have kind of kept myself from reading it and being spoiled until I acquire a physical copy myself. I know that it's available digitally as well. And I was lucky enough to find a kind soul that would help me get a physical copy, and I'm very grateful to that person. I couldn't help myself from getting spoiled from a few of the quotes. I think, in particular, Ted Mowbray posted a lot about how understanding Carp the person will help us understand Palantir as a company. But I found the funny quote in regards to if Palantir helped take out bin Laden, and he said well, if you have a reputation for talking about the Pope and what the Pope says when you meet him, then you'll never meet the Pope again. So I thought that was kind of funny. And just quickly on Thiel on the Joe Rogan podcast, what did you guys make of that? I know that it was out by the time we had the last weekly, but I don't think any of us had the chance to really digest the 3 hours long episode before we went on air. And to be honest, I was kind of surprised at how useless of a conversation it was. It was like 3 hours. And most of it was like, well, what do you think about aliens? And I'm talking like actual aliens and not the border related kind. And it was such a waste of time and such a waste of you get Peter Thiel for 3 hours and you can't come up with some better.
Well, that's probably why Thiel went on the show. I mean, if Thiel talked to like a business podcast, they would ask him real questions that we care about at least. But there's millions of people that care about aliens, and so he went on Joe Rogan's show to talk about that. But I thought it was largely irrelevant for investors. I mean,
is he the person to be asking about aliens? He just seemed to be as uninformed as the rest of us. It was just theories. Where Joe Rogan was very, very convinced that there's for sure life outside, and he's like, well, I don't know. I don't know. It was 3 hours kind of wasted. So I'm hoping that this New York Times piece isn't a waste of time reading it. And from what I could tell, people are very, very positive towards it. And even though we might not learn a lot more about the company than we didn't already know by following it daily for years now, I still think it. I hope it will provide some more insight into Carp as a person.
Yeah, I as soon as the Thiel podcast came out, I went to the transcript. I Command F'd Palantir. I saw 0 out of 0, and then I just didn't listen to it. I saw clips here and there, but I was just Thiel's amazing, but I've heard his thesis many times on, startups and philosophy and innovation. So I was I'm not going to listen to 3 hours of him with Joe Rogan. But I think they didn't talk about Palantir for a reason, and that's probably because Joe Rogan's not the person to talk about it. In terms of Carp's interview, my take on this is that the fact that you don't see a full sort of interview by one of the best reporters at the New York Times, Maureen Godlin, I think is her name. I'll get her exact name. Maureen Dowd. She won the 1999 Pulitzer Prize. This is a real piece on a CEO. You don't see this happen unless the CEO actually matters. And so for Zucks, we would get this type of piece. We saw 60 Minutes with Jensen a couple weeks ago with Elon. Obviously, that's happened. But you're not going to see this on the Datadog CEO, right? Or the Snowflake CEO, or the MongoDB CEO. There's not going to be this feature length kind of article discussing all the idiosyncratic ideals and philosophies of those CEOs, because quite frankly, they're not that important in terms of their stances and opinions on things. They run a software company. They're trying to keep improving that software company, but Carp runs a mission, right? And that's why it's so exciting. That's why he's got people involved that care about the company like us. And that's why we actually give a shit about covering the company. So I think it's really exciting for that media compounding thesis that I talked about last week, that I think more and more the media is going to care. And I think when Palantir is a $150 billion company or a $100 billion company, right now it's $70 billion, the media is going to want to cover him even more because he's this eccentric guy who has all these weird ideas and thoughts. And I think that's going to lead to more media distribution for Palantir at the end of the day. Matt, any thoughts on the Thiel Rogan thing and again, influence on the New York Times piece?
I'm with you guys. I only listened to the first half hour, and I really couldn't get into it. It didn't seem like they were diving into it. What I did do is I was sitting on the couch when I was listening to it, and I think I said this a little bit last week as well. I scrolled down to the comments, and people were starting to talk about Palantir a lot in the comments. So maybe it's worthwhile. I might make a video about that tomorrow, about actually the comment section and how people are kind of talking pretty poorly and negatively about Peter Thiel. Actually, it was pretty interesting. I think it's worth diving in.
Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think people were saying that?
Oh, about very much similar in a very much. I mean, how do I say this? I still believe you guys are gonna get me. Somehow, I'm just gonna end up deleted in my bedroom, and you guys are gonna be like, "How did Matt die?" So I'm still a firm believer that there's about 250 people in this world that actually run it, that are billionaires, and I think the main reason why Palantir is receiving so much hate is because it's really upending a lot of the normal traditional infrastructure, whether that was data infrastructure or just normal ways that people did business. I think it's truly upending that. And I think that's why you're seeing so much hate, right? And so much political backing, people buying other people to make weird comments and writing on X and, propaganda against the NHS deal and things of the like. And so I still have a firm belief that you have a lot of that going on with Palantir, which I think was one of the very surprising reasons I saw the Karp interview with the New York Times, because that's generally a left-leaning organization. But it was just very interesting. A lot of people saying pretty much what I said earlier. Palantir is a psyop for the CIA. Peter Thiel only wants to do X, Y, and Z. He wants to ruin America. He doesn't care about your rights. The simple stuff that we always hear, like Palantir doesn't really care about data security, silly things like that, where you're literally just like, these guys literally know nothing. Are they being paid to say this? Do they actually believe this? What's the true, is this propaganda? Is this actually how people truly feel? Is it, billionaires paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to make Peter Thiel look bad? Because the only other way that billionaires really fight with each other is litigate against each other, or apparently start rocket companies. So that's it's kind of where I'm kind of headed in my mind, is like, what's real, what's not. But I was just very surprised about the, I would say, 80% negativity that you saw in the comment section against Peter Thiel.
I just remember, like, the best thing we got out of the Peter Thiel Joe Rogan podcast was like the Thiel meme when he was asked about if he believes climate change is real, and then he goes on like a 20 seconds like and we got some memes like, okay, explain what EBITDA is adjusted for, and then it is like have you guys seen that?
Yeah,
I've seen some amazing memes from that. Oh my god!
That again points to the virality of those two figures, Karp and Elon, not Thiel, doing media appearances. Now, when Karp, all right, here's a question: when do you guys think Karp is going to do his full first 3-hour sit down with like a Lex Friedman or a Joe? Do you think that's ever going to happen?
Wasn't it like already confirmed by Lex that it's going to happen?
No, dude, that was just like some rumor. That's like maybe.
No, I've seen Lex Friedman post about it on X. I think one of the more recent, like his reason to stardom now on X, is it Jaws or something like that?
No, John posted that. Yeah, that account posted that. The
like
team is in collaboration.
You should have. Yeah, and Lex is like, okay, let's make it happen. Like he actually answered to it.
But maybe they haven't. Do you think it actually happens in the next year?
I would hope so. I don't know.
Sorry, what was the question?
Do you think Karp does like a 2-3 hour podcast in the next year, like a real deep dive podcast, and sits down?
I think it depends on what the context is and why.
I think it could happen because he's putting out a book in February, and he has to promote the book, right?
It could be.
Maybe. And it's been trending recently. I know the Rocket Lab CEO did something with Matt and Vince. I mean, you've been doing stuff with Vlad. I don't know. I think especially how outspoken he is in regards to retail investors and how important they are to the company in his eyes. I don't think it's impossible to imagine that he would put himself out there in the public eye like that by doing a podcast. We know that Elon frequently does them and stuff like that. So I don't know. Within a year, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like he would sit down with someone really big and like dish out a lot. But then again, I also think Carp's not the type of guy to sit still for a couple hours, and really do a podcast. So it'll be interesting if they ever have him do it. I'm sure he would want to do it. I'm not sure Palantir would want him to do it. So it would be interesting.
The thing that would make it very difficult, and this might be a positive or negative against Carp, is, and I do this sometimes too, when people don't know the right question to ask, they ask a rather rudimentary question, and he'll give you the answer that you really need to hear rather than the answer to your question.
Yeah.
So he'll almost like spin and I think that that's okay, but I think a lot of people get frustrated by that. They think that that might be like not truly answering the question at hand. But I think that there's so much of that happens in the finance world where they're like, give us X, right? Or give us Y. And it's like there's so much more gray than that. And in one, and then two, you're not asking the right question. Like, are you guys doing AI in your company? It's just like, you could spin that so many different ways. So he's going to answer the way that makes sense for him instead of just saying yes, right? That's what people want to hear. Maybe the blanket binary yes or no that they're doing AI in the company. He's going to talk about, how they're basically building the greatest AI company and why it's the best and why they think that they're going to be able to win comparatively to everybody else. And people are going to be like, oh, he pandered, for you, Amit, this one will be good. He waffled on the question and didn't necessarily answer to my liking. So, he sucks. Right. And then they have a negative perception about the company kind of going forward. So I think you need to have somebody that's really strong as an interviewer that's able to listen and be able to play within those kind of boundaries, because otherwise, if you have somebody that's not very strong, doesn't have a lot of intellect, he's just going to steamroll all over them. Like, I would anticipate he'd steamroll over me because I'm too kind, and I probably wouldn't like interject and be like, go deeper on that. Or, and also I'm not as well, how would I say this? I'm not as well technically savvy about how the back end of Palantir works to the extent that I would want to. So, he would probably jump all over me in that respect.
I've been thinking about like what options are there. Like Lex Friedman, I don't know too much about that podcast. The only like episodes I've seen are with Elon, and then he's mainly just fanboying Elon. So I don't think that would be very productive. Like I didn't have the best impression of that. Joe Rogan is more towards the entertainment side. I've been thinking like, what's that Indian guy name called? He's also pretty huge. Valuetainment or something like that.
Oh, that's not Indian, dude. He's Iranian. Patrick Bet-David.
Patrick Bet-David. Like he seems like he would be a good candidate because he actually does keep up with Indians. Sorry to all the Indians and the Iranians out there. Yeah, but I can't think of a lot of better candidates. But then again, I also don't watch a lot of podcasts. So
I do think Carp's going to do a lot of conferences in February when the book comes out and go on a speaking tour, which again, like I didn't even mention this last week on the whole media compounding thesis, but when you release a book that's going to be as controversial, he's basically going to give the middle finger to Silicon Valley. I mean, people are going to want to hear that. Like the only way you sell a book is if you say something controversial, because everyone's written about everything already. So you've got to have a unique take. And I'm sure at these conferences, he's going to be talking about that subject from the book, and I think that's going to create even more media attention and distribution for Palantir. Real quick on this insider selling, let's address this real quick because I know people are curious. This is one form, but there's plenty of them this week. I think insiders have sold like close to 4 to 5 million shares, give or take a couple 100,000 this week. Stocks up 94% for the year. These insiders got their shares probably at like $3-4. So for them, it's like a 10x. Amir, quick thoughts on insider selling and if it's any concern to you.
I mean, concern. I mean, it's never fun to see as an investor, but then again, we don't know like I have a lot of data on hand. The one thing I never bother tracking is vesting periods and stuff like that. And you should expect to see a lot more selling because Well, just to address first, we know that they do have automated sales for tax reasons. So as soon as they receive the shares, a portion is automatically sold. There are stuff like that. I can't break it out for you because I don't track it. Arnie would probably be better for that. So perhaps next week. But there is a dynamic within Palantir that's really interesting now. I know we have the performance-based RSUs now, which is great to see. Like depending on how Palantir stock performs, there will be compensation to the employees. But we also know that there are thresholds for vestment of stock options for the employees. So the higher the stock goes, the more dilution you will see in the stock, because there are like thresholds that whenever you reach them, you unlock more of the dilution. Arnie has a really good article on that, and because the stock is now soaring above 30, I think we're going to see a lot more dilution, and in turn there's going to be a lot more selling. I don't know if these are like conscious sells, like, okay, let's cash out, or if they are part of an automatic sale and this is done for tax reasons and stuff like that. It's not too concerning to me. I mean, the amounts were pretty big. I mean, we're talking about like didn't Glacier, do you have it, Amit? I think we're talking like 20-30 million dollars. Like it's like big amounts.
In aggregate, yeah. I mean, this one was 3 million, but in aggregate, all of them, when you combine it, it was a decent amount of money. Yep.
So I don't know. I'm not too concerned. We've been seeing this all throughout their public history, so I wouldn't put too much thought into it, and I don't really track it. It's one of the few things I decided not to track because it's such a mess with like the vesting periods and stuff like that.
Matt, your thoughts on insider sales?
Yeah, somebody that gets share-based compensation, I get why they have to sell a fraction of it, right? And I think you saw there was a pretty good chunk in there. It was like 114,000 out of the 2.2 billion share base. So in the grand scheme of things, rather small for that particular individual. But I don't necessarily know what to think. I mean, I think the guys have done a phenomenal job. They have their own interests as well. You have to think that in the grand scheme of things, not everyone's going to be CEO, right? And not everyone's going to be Carp, right? And some people want the big job, right? And some people want to eventually be, their own person. They want to create their own company. They want to be able to have their own destiny. They want to see if they can do it, right? And so, like, prime example, Amit, you have that entrepreneurial spirit. If you and I worked together and we formed a great big business, I would eventually see you selling off shares of whatever business we created to take that money and hopefully found your own company, right? Because you just have that spirit. And I'm sure there's many others within Palantir that have left, and some have come back, but some have left, recognizing fully that Carp's not going anywhere. And while they might love the mission that Palantir is on, they're going to take some of that money and they're going to try to start up their own company. They're going to try to do what Chamath have done. They're going to try to do what Peter has done. They're going to try to do a lot of these people have done, which is get involved in a great company, take some of that money, sell it off, and be able to fund their own ventures. And so, it could very well be a multitude of things. It could be taxes. Me, for example, I don't even get an opportunity to choose. When I get my shares vested, immediately 25-30% of it is taken from me. I don't even have the opportunity to say, oh yeah, sell, right? I can't take all of it. It literally is sold on my behalf, and I don't have that option to choose or not. He could be taking it in kind for housing. Maybe he needs a new Aspen house. I don't know. New beach house, maybe a jet. Who cares? Regardless, it's 114 million shares. It's not that big of a deal. 114,000. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel the same as well. I mean, the stock's up 90%. If the stock was not up as much as it was this year, they probably still would sell because it's scheduled. I mean, they were selling at $8, right? Because for them, their cost basis is very low. So if you're new to Palantir, you're never going to see insiders buy the stock, like just outright buy it. They're going to get options, but they're not going to buy because they've been there for so long, a lot of them, that their positions are so huge, it makes no sense to buy. But they will sell as we go up. The more interesting thing here is that the stock didn't move this week. In fact, we made a new 52-week high after all of this selling, which means we got to 33. We ended at like 31.70 for the week. But there is so much liquidity ready to scoop up these shares that insiders can sell a couple million shares, and the market just swallows it and goes forward.
And isn't it interesting on that regard that I don't know if it was Arnie or someone who posted a screenshot like on what the Robinhood investors have been doing through like the app. You can see like net in or outflows, and it seems like retail investors are selling off the stock.
Yeah, I'll actually check right now.
And also on the topic of SBC, I saw you tweet and make fun of Snowflake this week, Amit, where you said that, well, Snowflake spends so much on SBC and most of it goes to sales and marketing rather than their talent. And I was thinking, like, should I roast him and let him know that Palantir is the same, or should I not say anything? Did you know about that?
So Palantir's SBC is going to sales and marketing, is your argument?
It's not an argument, it's objective. I just know that you made fun of Snowflake because
so they spent 140 million on SBC. How do you know most of that is going to sales and marketing?
Because they break out how much SBC, like where the SBC goes to within. So you have SBC included in cost of revenue.
I actually didn't know this, so I'm curious. So how much goes to, can you show it? How much goes to sales?
Yeah, sure. I used to have a chart. I don't have a chart ready, but I will show you.
I'm actually really curious about that. It's
funny. I mean, I know that most of the employees are sales and marketing, so if you're just using that chart, it makes sense.
Yeah, like the forward deployed engineers, I think, go under general and admin, but and R&D specifically is, I think.
This is my thing. I don't think Palantir legitimately hires, and I could be wrong on this, thousands of sales and marketing people. I think they may be classified. I think a forward deployed engineer may be doing sales and marketing because they're literally selling the product at these boot camps or whatever, but I don't think that's actual Salesforce Snowflake type of S&M. At least I've never interpreted it that way.
Can everyone see this? Should I make it a little bigger?
You got to zoom in a little bit more.
Okay, so this is in millions, and we can see. Well, I have it since like 2019, but I don't think it's too relevant. But R&D, out of these three major categories, sales and marketing, R&D, and general and admin, R&D is always the lowest. And then it mixes between sales and marketing and general and admin for the biggest portion. And I don't know, I just thought it was funny that you made fun of Snowflake when sales and marketing is also but
it's a different. It's a majority. I think it's obvious.
I know. But I provided you an opportunity to learn more about the company. So
no, that's good. I didn't know that. But that brings us into our next discussion. Why don't we just talk about this? Snowflake stock. This is a chart that's not even updated. The stock is now at 115 for the week. It's down almost 50% year to date. Growth was 29% in Q2. 7,600 employees. They're growing a little bit more than Palantir. Not profitable yet. Again, 733 million of stock-based comp. So 44% of the revenue is SBC. Palantir is 20% of the revenue is SBC. Snowflake is one of those companies that obviously doesn't literally compete with Palantir, but we like to poke fun here and there and use it as a benchmark, given Wall Street loved it so much in 2022. Amir, any thoughts in general about their earnings?
Oh, I don't pay attention at all, but I still thought it's funny that people are like, well, buy the dip. Snowflake, and we've spoken about this all the time. It was a Wall Street scam, like literally. It was so, when they went public at something like 120, the stock hasn't like dipped below that since it went public, even though when I actually valued the company, I got a figure like $60 when I valued it. Now, given it was a year ago, but the growth outlook was a lot better a year ago than it is now without Slutman and stuff like that. So even when I valued it and had like higher growth rates, higher margin profiles, I still got like $60 when I actually valued it. So I always thought that it was super, super expensive. And I was like, well, it's definitely not worth where it was trading like 180 at the time. And people were like, oh, it's so cheap. And yeah, you made the comparison with Palantir, and a lot of people saw it as an superior investment. to Palantir, and that was always the argument. Like, even though people understood that they're not the same kind of business really, but they were like, oh my god, Snowflake go to market is so much better, Palantir should learn from Snowflake and stuff like that. But the company was always super, super expensive, and I still think it is, even though I haven't valued it recently. I just think the gap is too big to actually what it should be trading at. And the reason it's always been so elevated is because where it IPO'd. So imagine that you are a bank taking this company public, and you're selling this stock to your clients at 120. And the stock soars. There's this narrative about Warren Buffett being invested in all of these things. How are you gonna come out after you sell this to your clients at 120, and then you say, well, it's actually only worth $60? Like you can't do that. It's always been a premium. So I remember I read some equity reports, and they like really tried hard to like fidget with the numbers to justify like $180 price target, $210 price target. Like, they really stretch. Like, if people think that Dan Ives stretches far when he gives a price target for Palantir, where he says like, well, 5 years out they're gonna do this much revenue, and we apply this revenue multiple, and that's how we get $50 or $35. Like, the Snowflake analysts were really doing some strange things, let me tell you. So no, I don't care too much about their results. I had them doing like 30 plus compounded, so below that I still think the stock is too expensive. I'm not even gonna bother looking at the company. I don't think it's too interesting. What might be interesting is when Databricks drops, because that's an actual competitor and seems to be a much higher quality business overall, where their acquisitions, like their M&A strategy, seems a lot better than Snowflake. So I will be interested in looking at that company when that drops. But yeah, Snowflake, like, I don't even have the mental capacity to care anymore. Like, the stock is not interesting to me at all.
Yeah, Databricks is growing 60% year over year. That's the reported number. So they are growing faster. And they bought a company called Tabular for $2 billion. That's doing $1 million in revenue. Snowflake wanted to buy that company, but they couldn't, because they can't justify to shareholders paying $2 billion for a company. So Databricks is going to be very interesting when they go public, what valuation they're going to be. Snowflake's at $38 billion. Databricks, you would argue, at least 60, 70 billion. And then the question is, are they taking a lot of market share from a commoditized data warehousing product space from Snowflake? Matt, thoughts on Snowflake's earnings at all?
Well, to go back into what Amir was saying, I never really fully understood why Snowflake was something that people really wanted. I started to see, even though they had higher growth rates than Palantir, I never really saw what their moat was in general. And to me, I still believe that there's an opportunity for a lot of competitors to eat up what Snowflake really does. I mean, I don't really see a unique business model. And I think really the reason why people had any premium on it, Slootman is being mentioned in the chat, and a few other reasons, I think that's all kind of gone, right? You don't necessarily have this great salesman. I'm still curious to see if their acquisitions of late over the past 18 to 24 months have actually bared any fruit. To that, I have yet to really see or hear anything that shows that all these new things that they've bolted on are actually doing something. And Databricks, I mean, my short experience, like I said, it is very short comparatively to Palantir. It's a night and day difference still as well. And from what my experience was, it didn't seem like what Databricks was even doing. And like I said, it's very short experience, and I could be, missing a lot of what the features of Databricks entails. Didn't last very long at UDoc, from what I've seen. Still use Palantir every day. But have yet to, it seemed like Databricks, excuse my French when I say this, was like a fart in the wind. Like, it just kind of was there, and then it was gone. So it's very interesting to kind of say that. I have a feeling that Databricks will fall by the wayside eventually as well, even though it might be growing rather quickly. I don't necessarily see a moat, especially if you have this fighting between Snowflake and Databricks already. You have two lower tier sort of companies, and I know they're not all necessarily doing the same thing, but to me, it's obvious who's kind of number one. But going back to the actual note of what's going on with the stock and everything the like. It was always overvalued. I mean, just like you could say Palantir is as well, right? I mean, I could easily see Palantir pulling off, into the high 20s back to the mid 20s from where it is today, just based off of valuations of what the growth rate is. But I think you had this hype of Wall Street, like Amir was saying. So I'm not going to devalue anything that Amir had said. I agree wholly with what he had stated. And to me, maybe it's more obvious as to which one is a Wall Street darling versus what actually will be the winner in the end, because I've used one of the products. I've used Palantir extensively. If I didn't have that knowledge, maybe I would be blinded myself by all the media coverage that was given to Snowflake in a positive light. And really, it's only been the past few months that you've started to actually hear negative commentary about Snowflake with respect to the data breaches, coupled with, a lot of the slowing down of growth. So I would say that it's likely that is temporary. I'd say there's still a lot of companies out there that don't need the interactive layer that Palantir has. They might not necessarily be as technically focused, but they still need the cloud capability. They still need some of the query capability. And Palantir could provide that, but I think the Palantir piece is so much more that they provide like an interactive technological layer that you could build applications on top of. I don't necessarily think that Snowflake is going into that much depth where a lot of companies would actually need it. I think you're seeing very surface level companies with services go into something like a Snowflake versus you're seeing a lot of engineering, more complex problems, people that need independent operating systems, dashboards that literally focus on day-to-day operations. That's what you're seeing out of Palantir. So anyway, not surprised that you're starting to see cracks in Snowflake's stock price. I don't think it was ever warranted. I think it's a completely different tier of product compared to Palantir. But at the end of the day, I think it'll bounce back, right? It's still making 20-something odd % year over year in terms of revenue growth, and I think in the long term, it'll eventually be a profitable company. I just think right now they need to stabilize and really focus on getting themselves there rather than acquiring other companies that don't necessarily get them to that step change in sort of service that they're potentially trying to advertise themselves at. I think that's another problem. They're trying to advertise themselves as the premier sort of company, when in reality, and that was a Slootman thing, right? And in reality, it's just not the case.
No, I would agree. And I listened to the earnings call, and it was not fun. I mean, it's night and day when you listen to Karp and the Snowflake CEO, and I think that matters at the end of the day with good communication for investors. All right, next topic on the docket. Palantir hired somebody new. Guy's name is Mike Gallagher. He was in Congress for about 7 years, registered Republican in Congress, and he is going to be a defense consultant for Palantir and help them with their government business. And he's a well-known China hawk. Amir, I don't know if you know too much about this guy, but just the thoughts in general of them hiring a former congressman to work for the business.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot in terms of lobbying over the years, but I was surprised that this guy was given a 10-minute slot on CNBC. So he's probably like a bigger shot than I really knew. Like I've never heard of the guy, obviously, but I listened to the 10-minute CNBC slot like a few times over, and in general, I got a really positive impression of him. And ideologically, I think Palantir would be really hard pressed to find someone who would be a better fit with the company. And I was really surprised also at how he seems to be a really good navigator around the topics. Like he wasn't given easy questions. Like they tried to make him talk poorly about corporate America as a whole, and like a lot of traps. And also, to my understanding, he's one of the main drivers around the TikTok bill that got passed. And as he mentioned, that's like a bill that had huge bipartisan support, where they said, like, I don't know if there's like any comparative to how bipartisan that was. And that's really important to have someone like that with Palantir. And, we've seen Palantir recruit members to the company or to the board from previous governmental roles, higher ups at the DoD, people from the NHS before they went there. And as Mike Gallagher mentioned, Palantir is one of the few companies who understands how to navigate the political landscape and expedite the processes to get things done within the government space. So Palantir really seems to have solved that. Obviously, they know what they're doing. I got a really good impression of the guy, well-spoken, really aligned with the company. So I really got nothing negative to say about him. And good job, Palantir.
I like it. I think we need 10 more of them. Like, I think we need to get all these ex-Congress folks that have all these connections and just put them on payroll, give them whatever money they want, however much stock they want, because they will pay dividends in the future. I mean, when it comes down to getting a deal done and you need some guy to talk to another guy who knows the other guy to actually solidify it, this is when these guys become really valuable.
Yeah, like we have like former generals of the Air Force and stuff like that that they have acquired previously. But I would be really like, okay, I didn't track RSUs, and unfortunately, I don't track lobbying members. But I'm sure there's some Palantir investor out there that actually keeps track of all the lobbying power that Palantir has amassed. So please tweet at us if you have such a list and let us know.
Maybe that's a project I should take up, is just trying to figure out all the people that worked in Congress that now are advising Palantir. That's something to think of doing. And like, I'll make a big Excel sheet out of that, because I think we need to know all the people, because they had that federal advisory board. I don't think that's even relevant anymore, but General Milley, like, there's so many people that Karp and Thiel are connected to that's probably helping them get these multi-$100 million deals. So I think it was a great hire. Matt, any quick thoughts on Mike Gallagher?
I don't really have too much different other than what Amir had said. I think it was really well spoken, almost to the point where he definitely felt like he had those talking points like really well oiled. And so I was gonna say, it kind of felt like, and I'm kind of curious to see if he comes on again in the future and seems a little bit more personable. It almost seemed like he came there with a really high agenda. Obviously, he came on there with some sort of agenda, right? But it seemed like he didn't really want to show people his personality. He really wanted to show he means business. He really is focused on what he was working on in Congress and actually focusing that now into Palantir. And for those that don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, he helped write one of the bills for ByteDance and trying to get that kind of sold, their sale of TikTok to either an American company or non-Chinese company. Otherwise, they're going to get banned in the U.S. So he was into the intricate details of that piece before kind of leaving and moving to Palantir. But I think that this goes to continue. This continues to show the deep entrenchment that Palantir has within the government. I mean, they've been around now for 21 years in the government sector and have obviously done some good things. I think somebody wrote it here in the chat. Gallagher was in Iraq, and he could have used potentially Gotham over there as well. And, I wouldn't be surprised who else within the government sector has used it. We've seen several folks in office, whether it was from the Army or whomever, come over at this point to help continue to build. So I wouldn't be surprised, at this point, Palantir is almost a defense contractor and helping with the first line of defense. So almost hand in hand with those sorts of folks that are really focusing on keeping America safe and stuff of the like. And to be very frank, if you're a congressperson and you're not corrupt, your values should be very well aligned, right? With what Palantir stands for, right? You're going to Congress for, and I almost wanted to seek political ambitions as well, because you care about the country and you want to, make sure that things are good for the future generations, etc. And Palantir aligns heavily with that. It's just, I think sometimes people on the political side or the government side get a little bit corrupted and focus a little bit more on the lobbyism and what people can do for each other, etc. But that's a different story for a different day.
Yeah, I'd rather have my congressman getting paid by Palantir to be anti-China than getting paid by China to be anti-American, right? And so it's like 100,000%. I like these hires, and I hope they have more of them. And I think they're more impactful than hiring a dedicated sales rep, dude. Like, I think these are hires that are like really worthwhile to pay for. And we need as many as we can get, because the more people we have on our side in Congress, the better the government business hopefully can do. Okay, so we have one more topic left. So I'm going to put the StreamYard in the chat for anyone who wants to join and just say something, ask a question. It is an open link. Just keep your camera and mic on so we can see you backstage. We'll probably do 1 or 2 people if anyone joins. If not, no worries at all. Last topic for today is we got a new deal this morning. Given that JPow talked today, kind of took away from the excitement of this deal, but Sampo enhances digital transformation with Palantir's AI solutions. Sampo is an insurance company in Japan. They were one of the original investors in Palantir in 2018, and I still think they own a decent amount of Palantir. But they extended a 3-year partnership with Palantir. This initiative plans to invest over the next 3 years in data integration and AI solutions to drive digital transformation at the insurer, which is among the top 5 in the corporate and agribusiness insurance segment in Brazil. So the main part of this partnership is actually in Brazil itself, in Sampo's insurance division. A couple quotes on this. So one of the head of financial services and governments in Brazil says, "We are proud to partner with Sampo for their data analytics and AI journey and support their digital transformation to optimize critical processes for the benefit of its business and its customers. The impressive results that we are already delivering together underline our conviction that the company's bold vision combined with the adoption of Palantir software will give them a competitive edge." And then Sampo's chief strategy officer said, "Historically, the search for efficiency involved automating simple, repetitive, and high-volume processes. This still applies, but with the new technological frontier applied to the use of data and AI and the availability of simpler tools with natural language, aka LLMs, we can expand the search for efficiency to the organization's highly specialized core processes. The challenge now is to ensure that the team, meaning the actual employees, are involved and prepared for this new moment." Amir, any thoughts on this partnership and any kind of ideas around this extension with Sampo itself?
For like specifically how it's applied, we had the AIPCon presentation, so I would guess it's similar to what Sampo presented, but we also have a new AIPCon next week. So I'm interested to see if we will find out anything there. But, I have some higher general thoughts, because my first thought when I saw this, well, I've been thinking this for a while with the peer newswire thing about this specific deal, is I'm really curious what kind of deals are chosen to be publicized like on the PR news page. Because keep in mind, we signed 96 deals in Q2, and then around 200 across the 2 prior quarters prior to that. So it's like 300 deals in 3 quarters, roughly. And like, why do they specifically choose to publicize this and not some of the other stuff? Like, I'm really curious about that. And in regards to Sampo as a whole, I've been in contact with some Japanese Palantir investors, since I speak a bit of Japanese and my wife is from Japan. And I'm always amazed at how vast the Palantir community is in Japan. And I should have asked them, how they came to know about Palantir and how come it's so big for them. Because I know that for many of them, Palantir is not only their biggest stock investment. For many of them, it's like their only stock investment.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you guys have ever seen follows and likes from Japanese investors, and it's like the only company they care about. And it's interesting that we note a lot of what they call DX deal, which is like the digital transformation. The DX is the Japanese term, and I've been seeing that a lot, like with Palantir's previous partnerships, like in Japan, where I think the Japanese corporate society is very legacy in their mindset, and by extension, like, their businesses become legacy over time as well. So I think Palantir is like really well suited for the Japanese market as a whole, and not only like insurance businesses like Sampo, but we also see them commanding large deals with the biggest tech companies. Like, you wouldn't think that a big tech company would be legacy, but we've seen them have huge partnerships with Fujitsu and some of the others, where they like specifically note like the term DX, which is digital transformation, and we see that again here. So I think my theory is that Palantir is so popular in Japan because it seems to be like a fast digitally do this digital transformation that I always speak about. And I should ask my Japanese friends that invest to see, like, why do you care so much about Palantir? Because I haven't actually asked, like, okay, why do you care about Palantir?
I also think the brand of Palantir is very elite, and there's a sort of Japanese kind of anime elitism towards the brand, the logo itself, right? and I think those Japanese investors, that and Tesla.
I don't know.
I don't know about all
I
that
don't know
piece,
about
but
that one.
No, like
I-
don't you think like the like when you make those drawings, Amir, that waifu stuff?
yeah,
whatever
when
it is,
when are those coming back?
like it always reminds me of like this elite
probably
image.
aren't coming back.
Why not?
Do you know why I made those? I had like 100 followers on Twitter back then, or something like really low. And I read that when Elon Musk took over, like a lot of things about the algorithm became public. So like, well, if you attach an image to your tweet, it will have further reach. So like every post I made about Palantir, I was like, well, I'm learning a lot about prompting, AI prompting. So I'm just going to use Midjourney and then just generate a image to go along with every tweet I make for Palantir. And by the end of it, I accumulated like something like 120 different images. And then I would go in and quickly edit in like a screenshot of, if you go to media, I posted like most of them. Just go down and you will hit the wall.
Oh yeah, there you go. There's one.
No, go up.
Go up.
Oh, up. And not that fast. Chill. Okay, go down. Oh my god, dude. Okay, go.
Oh, these.
Okay, no, it doesn't show all of them. Oh, you see, it's like in groups of four.
Is this like Palantir porn or something? Is this like this?
No, like it was relevant. So when they dropped AIP, so I'm like, you see, I edit in like actual screenshots from Palantir software on the screens and stuff like that.
But this is what I'm saying. In Japan, they're all over this type of like anime shit, and I feel like that's why they're attracted to the brand Palantir.
Amir is why they are investing so heavily into Palantir.
Okay. I'll take 5% of Japanese revenue.
Yeah, there you go. But I want to tag on to what Amir is saying. I agree wholly. I think the word that you might have missed was culture, right? I think Japanese are very intense with respect to culture. I think they almost put culture before they put capitalism, and so I'm with you.
Yeah,
I think they also.
That's what I meant with legacy.
Yeah, you know way more than I do, right? Because obviously you're married into Japanese culture, right? So I know very little, but they also focus on very long wavelength planning schedules, right? So they don't look after the normal American sort of quarter by quarter. And I think Palantir also kind of removes themselves from that, right? Although we look at it, the results by quarter, you always hear Karp himself talk about the next 4 to 5 years and what we're developing down the pipeline. And they're focused on that, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if actually they view Jeff Bezos in a very strong light as well, maybe because, he's very much like a 10-year sort of focus kind of guy as well. But, I think that's why you might see that alignment so well with Palantir and what they're doing. In terms of Sampo, though, yeah, I don't necessarily know too much. I mean, Brazil itself is a pretty, specifically when it comes to agriculture, a lot of land, obviously, and they also have 200 some million people, and it's growing at about 2 to 3% per annum. So it's obviously a decent place to kind of store something in terms of businesses. If you're looking for anything, it's 2.5% of the world's sort of population. So in that respect, it's a nice place to kind of be for this particular case that they were kind of looking at. But I didn't know that they had AIPCon next week, so I'm kind of curious. What day is it? Tuesday or Thursday or
the 5th of September? And I got it from the Kinder Morgan X Palantir AIP Now slide that came out. It said like this is what we have done with Palantir in the past, and then they had like dates for like when Kinder Morgan presented at previous AIP cons and what they've done. And then there was like this empty one at the end, which says AIP Con 5 in September. So I think the slide was posted by Arnie on X if people want quick access to it. I don't know the original source, but that's where I found it. So I'm assuming that, September 5th, what's that like in? Oh, it's more than a week. So 2 weeks, my bad. But yeah, it's soon.
Yeah, okay. It allows me to go to Cancun, reset my internal clock, and then come back and look forward to AIPCon.
All right. We got 2 people backstage. We're going to bring them up, and we'll do one by one, and then we'll be done for today's episode. Brandon, you're on the show.
How we doing? How's my audio? I apologize.
Your audio is great.
Sounds good, brother.
I was not prepared for this at all. It's 11 o'clock, or it's midnight now. So
Why are you watching a Palantir podcast at midnight? Can you answer that question?
Well, I'll be 100% honest with you. I mostly follow you for Robinhood content, but now over the past couple of weeks of tuning into the streams, I'm starting to convert into a Palantard myself here.
I love it. That's great. That's great. Okay, awesome. Any question or anything you wanted to say?
Basically, I'm just starting to get into a position with Palantir. What I have been doing is I was in your stream earlier with TJ when you were talking about wheeling.
Yeah.
And I was commenting a little bit. I said you can use margin on Robinhood as collateral for selling
Right.
puts, and so I've been doing that for the past couple weeks now because I just made that connection. I was like, well, I have access to all this margin. I may as well use it, or since it's
It was
collecting
pretty
dust at
life
this
changing when
point.
I found out as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I've been using the premiums that I've been selling to actually like, okay, I'll just buy Palantir because it's like I'm using free money to get into this company that has a lot of conviction for a lot of people. So I figured, all right, I can get behind it.
So why don't we ask you a question? I know you've been getting into Palantir from like the streams and the videos, but what attracts you to Palantir as a new investor, and why do you think you would like to have a long-term position in the company?
Yeah, so a couple of things with that. One, a lot of conviction around it. It seemed to have a good community, right? So if there's other people willing to buy it, then that means that there's probably something going on there. So that's one thing I look at. Two, they're executing on actually making money, right? So the primary function of a business. So that's what we like to see as well. And then also just I'm a Navy veteran, so I do like military aspects and
Thank you for your
applications
service.
there, and appreciate it. Thank you for your support. And so it's just like that, and then also with the Lord of the Rings reference as well. So with Palantir being, the seeing eye thing, and then my buddy, his brother works for Anduril, so I recently just learned about Anduril as a company as well, and I was like, oh, so now we're just gonna start making the Lord of the Rings ETF here if we just get like another company called like Gandalf or something. I don't know.
Can we all collectively shame Amit for still not having watched The Lord of the Rings while talking about this company daily for years on end, and he still has not watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy? I mean, this
9 hours is a lot of time, dude. It's a lot of time.
I just saw you post about like, oh, I need a new TV show. I have nothing to watch. Like, come on, man, what the fuck?
Well, what attracts you, or does anything attract you about Karp? And have you seen him kind of talk and give interviews and stuff?
Yeah, so Carp, this is all sort of like new territory for me. So like I am trying to learn about, Teal and Carp. My buddy says Peter Thiel's part of like the PayPal mafia, and so
Yeah.
we want to, we like those guys so far.
Does
So,
Karp
yeah.
strike you as kind of like weird or odd or anything? What's your first impression of him?
Definitely not your typical CEO, right? Which has both pros and cons to it, but at the same time, it's more of leaning towards the pro side because the way he does things, it's not primarily like money driven. I'd say like he has like an idea that he wants to execute on, and money just becomes a after effect of doing what it is you want to do, like a passion project.
Right. Okay. I love it. Matt, anything you want to say?
Yeah. So thank you for coming on. I know getting in front of a couple hundred people is not very easy, but I also appreciate your service. I do want to caution you. I've been investing for about 10 years. I don't know how much margin you're using, but just be very careful with that. I remember having the same conversation. A lot of people think it's very free money, and I had the same conversation with Vince about 4 or 5 months ago, and then he completely almost blew up his account.
Yeah, Vince
Right.
made some mistakes.
So just be very cautious, right? And I've done something similar where I ended up over stressing myself, thinking that it was very easy, and everything makes sense, and it makes a lot of sense to take on more and more risk when the market is really going up, and we've been in this very clean market now, I'd say, since pretty much the beginning of 2023. We've had some pullbacks, right? We had that pullback in October of last year. We had that slight pullback in early August a couple of weeks ago. But I just want to caution you, man, like don't don't overdo it, right? Just be if they have an opportunity to model in Robinhood, I don't know, but just be cautious, because when everything goes down 50%, or even 30%, that margin that you might have drives up very quickly. So make sure you always have a pretty significant buffer. And I don't want to be too preachy, but just do some modeling if you can, because I've preached the same to Vince. And you feel invincible, and I think sometimes you lose. Not saying you, but I personally as well have lost touch with reality, because you make a contract, and next thing you know, you have $2,000 in your account, and you're like, holy shit, I can go spend this $2,000 and go do whatever I want, buy stocks with it, or this or that or the other. And at the end of the day, if things kind of go sideways, you end up liquidating a crap ton of stuff that you don't want to liquidate. And that's happened to me before. So
real quick on you, Brandon, this is selfishly for me. When did you get into Robinhood? When did you get excited about that stock?
That was earlier this year. That was probably around, was it March or April, whenever they announced the
Gold
credit
card.
card.
Okay.
Because that was like the tipping point for me, because I've been using Robinhood since maybe, I don't know, 2017 or something. Like it's been my main brokerage, and I was like, I'm not sure if I want to like actually own the company, which was like a stupid thing, because like, I'm putting like pretty much my life savings into this app. I may as well like have some skin in the game with the company. But then with the credit card, the 3% cash back, it's literally like the best on the market as far as like a cashback rewards card, because before that it was just like the Citi double cash card where you get 2% on everything, and so just getting 3% on everything, like it's going to be replacing so many people's main everyday spend credit card, and then that's just puts them way ahead. Like that's taking market share out of Apple's pocket, because Apple, their highest cash back on their credit card is 3%, and that's only on Apple products, where it's just like a no-brainer.
All right. I love it.
Let me just echo what Matt said. When I heard leverage, I heard the term free money, and I learned from Amit. Be careful, man. I echo everything that Matt said in regards to leverage. And if you need to motivate yourself, just Google Warren Buffett leverage quote and have a read. I'm not gonna preach too much, but be careful, man.
Absolutely, I appreciate the concern. I do. I don't know. I don't want to like say like I've been doing this for a while and like I kind of understand the risks about like I definitely set up a set of rules for myself before I do make any sort of decision with that. I say free money when like I know there are definitely risks associated.
No,
with that.
I think the term free money is not the wrong term at all. It can be interpreted as the wrong term by like Amir and Matt, who want to preach right now, but it doesn't have to be the wrong term. So I get what you're saying, and there's a lot of responsible ways to use leverage. But there's also a lot of irresponsible ways, right? So it's
Amit says that because he has yet to get hit in the face with any sort of massive.
As Matt said, I had the same conversation with Arnie and Vince when he was like trying to explain, like, I'm doing this with call options and it's free money, and I'm like, dude. So I had like this whole session where I trying to, like, okay,
yeah, but I also
understand it. And he was like, no, man, you don't understand it. And then he got wrecked. Like he
but Amir, you also don't do options.
That.
Someone can get wrecked, but if you don't do options, you also are coming from a standpoint of not understanding it as well as someone who does do options.
Okay, let's not get into that now. But okay,
I gotta poke at them.
I will say, Amir and I don't always agree on everything, but I do agree with him on this.
Like,
and I think I admit
there are responsible ways to use leverage. There are non-responsible ways. That I think everyone can agree on. That's not controversial. So you have to use it responsibly.
Man, don't get me. Okay. Let's leave
Brandon,
it.
Thanks for joining. We'll check you out later. Thank you, Brandon.
Thanks for having me, Amit. Thank you.
Nice meeting you, brother.
All right, let's get someone who was at AIPCon with me, who has been a Palantir from the beginning, ladies and gentlemen, who uses Palantir at his job, Michael Lau. Michael, what's up?
Hello, Michael.
How's it going?
Michael, people don't know you. Can you introduce yourself? Because I met you in person.
Nice t-shirt.
Oh, thank you.
I met you in person. You use Palantir. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey with Palantir and the company and how long you've been interested in the stock itself?
So, fun fact: I work in IT. So, computer scientist by trade, engineer. I think I'm live in Houston with Matt. You from Houston as well?
Yes, sir. We'll need to grab a beer.
Yeah, for sure. So I honestly just invest my own money on the side just for funsies, and kind of just with being familiar with IT. When I discovered Palantir, just investing, I bought shares in the stock and kind of discovered what they were doing and thought it was like pretty powerful compared to like what I had access to it at my work. And so I was trying to talk with the CTO and say, like, this is kind of something we need to incorporate in our business and stuff. So I won't go into too much detail about the businesses I've worked at, but it started out as investment purposes, and sort of just using my senior software engineering background to understand a little bit from the outside what the company's doing and wanting to get my hands on it and apply it in my career. And then just, realizing to some extent that I would start transitioning my career towards that job, even if my company wasn't going to implement it or what. So it kind of was like initially just investing my own money as a hobby, but as well as like sort of shifting my career that direction and then wanting to be a part of it. So
why are you such a passionate investor in the stock, and you're so big on the community? Why do you care to be in the Palantir community?
I think it's kind of similar to like the path of like code strap and just sort of understanding the technology, and then kind of like, and then also the community is pretty awesome. But anyway, it's just like I can sign up it, like what we kind of envisioned, what was happening and what was going to happen is kind of coming to fruition, and it's just sort of watching it grow is exciting. And so, as well as my bank account with the investment that we bought, like, when we were getting, when it was, I bought even more shares as it was going down, and so stockpiling it up and then watching it grow, and then watching sort of the literal partnerships with like, the PwCs of the world and the new partner programs that are coming about, and just the customer growth stories and stuff. So it's just really exciting to see. And so, I like the camaraderie aspect of it. At the beginning, like I told you at AIP, with my previous employers, I just kind of had to wait in the shadows. I didn't know how much I could actually talk about. So I just kind of was a fan from afar. Actually, I kind of like watched your channel a lot as it grew. And so I would kind of just support just because I was like, wanting to support the little guy at the time. And now you're doing great. So I'm like kind of like a proud friend that you didn't even know. So it was really kind of fun to meet you and Arnie and stuff at AIP. And I was hoping I can go to the one upcoming, but I'm not sure if I'm going to make it. But yeah, anyway.
Very cool. Well, I'm sure you don't want to note what particular company you work for, but I'm curious what industry in particular you kind of focus in that, and have you used other products? I'm curious as another Palantir.
So I use a commercial product, but I support the government aspect for like healthcare. So actually we've been using Foundry since we're one of the earliest adopters of Foundry since the 2010s. 2016, I think maybe is when they started using it. So they were using it for the benefit of, all the siloed data. And so Foundry was sort of the solution to all that. And then AIP was just like icing on the cake. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, finish it.
I was going to say that, like, so it's awesome to me as far as an experience as well, just like kind of being there, is because they already had a lot of their ontology established. It's growing as we speak, but it's a lot faster liftoff for AIP implementations and benefits, especially when in healthcare you deal with a lot of ingestion of unstructured data and imaging of scans and stuff like that.
Amir, go ahead.
No, what I was gonna say is I looked up, like your face looked vaguely familiar, but I wasn't too sure. So I looked up the Twitter handle that you put as your name, the @MSL0727, and you look very different. But I was sure that I had the right person. And
I have a beard in that.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of your posts floating around on X. And at times I was confused, like, does this guy work for Palantir? Because you've given me so much insight into the different like architectural stuff. Like I'm not a engineer, developer, or anything like that. I do work in IT, but just as a mere systems administrator, you know, so very a lot lower level than you. And I remember reading posts from you, and I was like, well, man, this guy knows what he's saying. So I've given you a follow. Very nice
Yeah,
to
so
see you.
I'm a you know, like for example, Coach Trev works for PwC and he's a consultant and he has his clients. I'm a consultant that works for a partner of Palantir, so I'm not a Palantir employee, but I have a very long-term contract with a government entity for healthcare purposes, and so indirectly, I'm like working with them long-term. You know, like there's no short-term lived project and I'm going on to another client. It's more or less I'm just like working with them directly, but I'm essentially like a Palantir contractor. So I'm in Foundry every day that I'm working and working using AIP, and so I get a lot of access to the product, and I have a software engineering background, so I'm somewhat familiar with it, and I look into a lot of the infrastructure stuff. So I'm like I have a little maybe a little more understanding about the underlying infrastructure than maybe just the common person. But
so based on you using it pretty much every day, bird's eye view, how big do you think Palantir can become in 10 years?
I think it could be huge, and that's just my opinion. But because I think, you know, we jokingly say, and there's some seriousness to it, is like we'll just take the whole effing market, right? But it's like what market? I feel like data is applied to every market, right? There's like data issues in everything, so it seems like the actual product can be applied in every sort of industry. So I think it has a huge potential, and
obviously healthcare is like just a massive industry for data.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they have a lot of like nightmare as far as data goes, and this is sort of a little bit of a saving grace to them. I feel like, you know, from afar. Our work is more in the sort of cancer research aspect, not like some of these other hospitals that are doing it for like scheduling. But just in general, like I know like CodeStrap and I were kind of going back and forth on Twitter the other day about like what they need to do to 10x, right? When the goal isn't to 2x, it's to 10x, and then, you know, and then grow from there. And so, you know, it's focused on building the dev community, and that's why I tweet a lot, and I'm trying to be part of the community and say like what's good for the community, what's good for bringing more builders, more engineers into the product.
Yeah, and we need more people like you, dude. We need more people like you and Matt that actually use it every day, that are engaging with it, and that can help people understand the actual user experience. Because obviously, me and Amir, you know, don't do that every day.
Sure.
Yeah, we definitely need people like you. I'm more of a rudimentary user. I don't, although I use Foundry and Quiver and Fusion workbooks and stuff like that. It's rather rudimentary what I do compared to some of the people that you probably met at UDoc at AIPCon, which I'm sure, I don't know if we've sent many folks. I know the first AIPCon we sent some folks, and the first FoundryCon we did as well. But yeah, I don't know. Did you see any people from UDoc, Amit, when you went last time?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think we had anybody there.
I explained to someone as like there's stuff in the platform for like you have your low code and then your no code and your pro code stuff. So, you know, I may have the ability to go in and write a React application that uses the OSDK and the, you know, in the ontology and build out all that stuff. But like in most examples, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. Like just like spin up an object, like workshop quickly. You don't have to go like the most complicated technical way to do things, right? So I think the whole point of what they're doing is how can we make even the most like non-technical person, you know, efficient, as well as like delivering value to the company. So so you see people from, you know, various levels of prowess in the technical world using the product, and I think even myself, like I do a ton of stuff in a workshop, for example, even though I could be doing like, you know, much more in like code repos or my own designated environment. But like most of the time these types of users that are interfacing with this stuff is like internal operational, just trying to get them what they need in front of them as fast as possible. And so if I can just like drag and drop and click and build something real fast for them to use, then it's like move on to the next thing so we can deliver more value.
So you were at the previous AIPCon, and we've heard a lot about, we've talked to Arnie and Amit, they were there, like, what, and then we asked them, like, okay, Amit, what was some of the impressive demos you saw there and stuff like that? But I would assume that you actually partook in workshops and stuff like that there. What's some of the, like, technically impressive stuff that you saw people doing at the boot camps? Like, what impresses you as an engineer compared to something that would impress Arnie? They're like, well, I put a headset on and it was cool, but like, what's your like deeper, like someone who actually does stuff? Like, what was there something that really impressed you at the previous AIPCon?
It just seemed like everyone was kind of like in awe. And it seemed like I felt like, you have to understand that AIP is like kind of young. It's only really been like around for a little over a year. And so a lot of people were just, I guess the manufacturing aspect of things that Jacobs was using. Yeah. That was pretty awesome. Like to use the VR stuff in manufacturing and sort of like plugging that into the back end. Cause it's like, I guess people don't realize how difficult that really is to put together. But
again, like mixed reality, that was really awesome to see.
Yeah, that's where I was like, okay, that's awesome. But you have to also realize, like, a lot of the people were super giddy and excited about their implementations, but a lot of people were like very early on. So I know at one point Arnie and Amit and I kind of looked at each other and we're like, dang, I feel like we're really early here, because a lot of people are just kind of learning what's going on here, and they're just getting started on their implementation. So I feel like there's a ton of room to grow as far as like what they're able to achieve. But it seemed like everyone was really just like generating insane value out of making their everyday duties much more efficient, and sometimes achieving things they couldn't do before. And so I think, I was just kind of in awe of it. And I actually was a little bit of surprise, I guess, because where I work, we've been using the product for so long. So I was a little impressed with where we stood with the sort of everyone's state of development. But I left very excited.
Are you guys continuing to deepen the amount of use cases that you have within your organization, or is it kind of like you've hit a plateau and you're kind of just using that as kind of your current system? Or are you guys still looking to, because specifically for hospitals and government agencies, and collaborating the two, I assume that there's a lot of legacy systems that could be decommissioned and a lot of disparate data systems that could be continued to be added into the workflow. And I'm just curious, because we're doing that personally at UDOC. Curious if you guys are doing that as well.
Well, so there's like the National Institute of Health, and then there's different ICs, or I should say institutions within that. And so I support one specifically that tries to like do a little, it's doing most of the funding. In fact, on this project specifically, but they were at FoundryCon like many moons ago and presenting. And so, they're one of many institutions, and I don't know what they can say as to what they can shut down as far as those data systems. I don't know. In some instances, I don't think that they have control over the actual management of those systems themselves, but they're trying to essentially aggregate and bring stuff together so that they can, advance their researching capabilities. So I think they're just trying to get as much data in as possible, make use of it, and now applying AI to it is just trying to like figure out cures as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I agree. I think we're really early, and the small amount of use cases we saw at the first AIPCon that all three of us were at, seems like that's just going to expand and expand and expand. Like we saw Wendy's present at that AIPCon, but like the broader public didn't really know they were working with them yet. And then we got this Wendy's deal, which is 6,000 stores are powered by Palantir.
Yeah.
It's just exciting, dude. It's exciting to see how that continues to expand over the next decade. All right. I think that's it for us, folks. Michael, thank you for joining. For those that don't know Michael, his Twitter
Nice meeting you,
here.
brother.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you. Yeah, how's it going?
His Twitter in the chat. Definitely check him out. Matt's and Amir's Twitter as well in the chat. I'm putting it. It's in the description. I'm putting the chat right now. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Any final words, Michael?
Nope. Good luck,
Well,
guys.
let me ask you one question, and then we'll end it
Sure.
on that. What does the Palantir community mean to you? Let's get sentimental.
I don't know. I just like the involvement in the community, the passion that everyone has. You know, it's late on a Friday night, and here we are sitting here talking
That
about.
is crazy, though, right? It's late on a Friday night. 300
For 140 some episodes in a row.
I know, and I better go before I get in trouble with the wife. But you know, it's just something about this community. It's like, you know, it's exciting, and it's fun when it's going in the right direction. And so, you know, I don't know, it's just something that feels good to be a part of, and that's why, you know, I hate to see Eliana get a lot of flack just because he's like, you know, we're selling stuff at cost for fun, you know, just to support the camaraderie that we have in this community. So I'm just like, you know, I'm here for it. I'm here to support it. You know, I don't get anything about like any benefit. I'm not actually trying to start like any media, anything, you know, right? I'm just partaking in it for the sake of fun, and any benefit that may come of like spreading the knowledge and the support, and trying to make clarify any confusion that people have when they seem to think that they don't understand what Palantir does. Which I will say, so my comment on that is actually that, like, you know, if I had any bear case, which was not really much of a bear case, but at the beginning was like, I understood to some degree that as a technical person, I could understand the stock, that it would take a little bit of work to try to explain things and have people like yourself make videos, really sort of helping people frame their minds around like how this is revolutionary. Like, right. How can you buy a stock if you can't grasp what they're doing? And it's not that you can't, it's just kind of takes a little more effort than, oh, you know, like I also have had owned, you know, Tesla shares and stuff in the past, but it's like, oh, you just show them a cool car, right? They know, okay, you know, they sit in it and they think, okay, this is going to change the world, right? Or, you know, they may have that aha moment, even if they don't know anything about what goes into battery chemistry or anything like that. But when it comes to Palantir, it's really hard for them to have that aha moment until you show them what it's capable of doing, or you explain it a little better to them. So, but yeah, you know, that's becoming a lot easier to do now with what you've done, and what, you know, with Chad's explanations out there, and people like myself and Coach Strap's videos and stuff like that. So it's just
it's crowdsourced due diligence at the highest of levels. And we were all lucky enough to be in this, you know, a couple years ago. But as more people get in, they're going to get so much wealth of information from everyone contributing. So,
yeah,
exciting. And you said you owe me Mexican food when I'm in Houston. So,
you got it.
So when I'm there, we got to get some good stuff.
I'm going to take Eliana to a place here soon too.
Okay, perfect. That's great. I love it. All right, that's it for us. Thank you, everybody. Hope you guys have a good weekend. We'll see you next Friday.
All right, take it easy,
Mike.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for joining. Bye, everyone. Have a good one. Good night.